When do you know that you want to open up your relationship? Like, when did you know?
When did Shlomo know?
Yeah. That he wanted more than one love.
Yeah, well, so Shlomo's an interesting case too because Dexter wasn't like that. Dexter was very, very, very non-monogamous right from the get-go. But
Oh, yeah.
Shlomo caps it. He's got like a threshold because he does get saturated. So he
Yes.
can't have that many loves, but he can have two,
Well, yeah, but
three very, very intense loves.
there's definitely a, who's the third? There's definitely a hierarchy. Is there somebody I've not heard of who's
I don't know
Shlomo's third
actually.
love?
I don't know. I feel like he can get there with certain people. He just hasn't quite spent enough time with them.
I see.
But I think he has the capacity to add another.
Oh, you think he's got room for one more?
He's got room for one more.
Okay.
Maybe even two, but it's hard to say.
There's definitely a hierarchy, though. I mean, the way he looks at you is not the way he looks at me.
I don't think that's true. Now, Morgan
Yeah, well, Morgan is.
is monogamous.
Yeah. Well, she
Morgan
dabbles.
did not. She attempted to have
She
another pet around, but
she's
no longer has she aged.
monogamous, but she likes to have some flings on the side occasionally when I'm not around.
Yes, no, it's true. She's quite good, but her heart belongs to you.
Yes, this is true.
In a more intense way, I think, than
Yeah, but she's not like
Shlomo does for me.
She's not controlling though, like she doesn't try to tell me like you can't love anyone else. Like I can, I can show Shlomo love, and
absolutely, she's not jealous,
and she's not jealous.
She's not jealous, and not only that, when you are not around, she does make do with anyone else that's around. She's not like putting a tantrum of like it's David or no one else.
Exactly.
It's not like that.
No, but when it is me, she's like, oh, it's business time.
It's business time. I only have eyes for you.
Yeah.
Yes. We're talking about a cat. Just, to clarify. If someone ever listens to this and doesn't know who Morgan is. That's all I want. I just want to help people.
Yeah. Ideally. I mean, that's the only reason to do any of this.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are struggling to make sense of these desires we have.
Yeah, there are people struggling in our lives right now.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So, I mean, sort of the topic of discussion is how do you know or when you want to open up your relationship, and when's a good time to do that, is if there is such a thing as a good time to do that, and what to do when things get challenging.
Yeah, and
so
knowing if it's worth
right
knowing if it's like something you need to actually go for, as opposed to we all have thoughts and feelings and desires and fantasies about what our lives could be, and trying to make sense of whether it's worth potentially flipping everything on its head in your personal life. Is it worth it for this particular need or desire?
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough one. I mean, everyone is going to have their own risk assessment and calculation to make.
Okay.
So whether it's worth it or not.
So what are we talking about here? Like, what does it mean to open up your relationship? What are the different ways in which this can happen, and what types of arrangements what kinds of options might they have if they are thinking about this? And what is it like, why would anyone want to do this at all?
Yeah. Well, obviously there are many reasons why someone would want to do this at all. And it has to start from a desire to want to explore things with other people, whether it's more intimacy, sex, just connection with someone new or someone else other than whoever you've been with for a long time, potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, people arrive at this desire, whatever you want to call it, desire or need, from different places. So all of those are valid and all of those are fine. We are social beings and we're just naturally attracted to others. And I think that it makes sense that you'd get to a point in your life where you'd wonder, okay, am I at my capacity in terms of how many people I want to share my life with?
Mm-hmm.
And in like a intimate way. And that could potentially be threatening to your monogamous arrangement with your current partner. And so, yeah, assessing whether that particular desire or need is important to communicate to your partner about. Maybe they're feeling the same way. And then it's a Yahtzee moment of you're both wanting to explore this kind of journey.
Yeah.
Or not. Maybe this is the first time they've ever thought about it, and that might be really challenging to navigate. I will say that unfortunately, more often than not, people approach this like, I have to tell my partner something, as this like really serious news that's going to potentially be hard to hear. And so it ends up framing the entire thing as a negative, as something that's going to be big, a bomb that we're throwing into the mix. It's going to change everything. This weight to it that, in my personal opinion, I feel may not be the best approach, but I also understand why it may come up this way, because you're so concerned that you might hurt the person that you love by telling them that you're interested in other people,
right,
or meeting other people.
So what's an alternative way of framing it then? If people are considering talking to their partner who they've been in a monogamous relationship with about opening up, whatever that might look like, and we can come back to what that might look like in a minute, but what's the alternative to sort of like dropping the bomb on them and saying like, I've got something really important to tell you, and sort of framing it in this way of like, you might not like this, or you're probably not going to like this.
Yeah.
But what's another alternative way of doing it?
I think maybe framing it as an invitation to join you on this new, whatever you want to call it, this path, an invitation to sort of explore it together, or at the very least have open communication about it, so that you're not necessarily going off and doing your own thing where your partner knows nothing.
Right.
Now, not everyone's going to want to come along for the ride, but at least the invitation potentially avoids this hurt that your partner may feel, that you're breaking this team, this unit that you were kind of assumed into your whole relationship, because you didn't, whether it was explicit or not, made a monogamous commitment to each other. And so by saying I want to see others, your partner might view that as being, you're separating us now. And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to separate you. In fact, I think that in a lot of ways, the non-monogamous part of yours and mine's relationship has brought us closer together. Yeah, and I think that's a hard thing to understand when you're not in it. But if framing it from the get-go in that way might avoid the person who is kind of receiving this for the first time as less of a threat to the unit.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's always felt to us like it was a journey that we were on together, even though we're doing things with other people and not just with each other. But it always kind of had that feel of, this is a ride we're on together.
Yes, yes.
And I could see that as being a more positive way of framing things. I think it might be hard for some people to get their head around that at first.
And it does depend on why you choose to open up in the first place, because it's possible that you're just itching for someone other than your partner, and you don't necessarily want your partner to know anything about it. Or, so it's possible that you're just like, it's better if they don't know, and I'm just going to go off and do it.
Yeah.
But
sorry, go ahead.
if you've chosen to, maybe this is like a romantic approach, but if you've chosen to share your life with someone for the rest of your life, then why not invite them on this ride? You don't have to share everything. You don't have to tell them everything. But if this is going to be, when you start a new job, you maybe don't tell your partner everything that happens every single day about every single detail, but they know that you're in a new environment and there's new people around and there's a new schedule, right? So I feel like knowing what your partner is up to at the very least makes you feel that more connected and not so alienated from this new venture, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I think that there's value to that. There's value for someone who is being told, you represented this to me for this long, and now I want to see other people that are going to represent something else in my life, and you need to understand what your role is now, because that might feel threatened in this moment. You're the wife, you're the girlfriend. Then who are you now that you're going to have other girlfriends, right? And so it's important to communicate what you mean to that person, what they mean to you, what your unit and what your partnership means to you first. And that should be the starting point. And then from there, you're branching out to doing other things. And I think that helps. Not everyone goes into non-monogamy from a partnership, but in this case, we're talking about people who are already in existing partnerships that want to open up. I think that it's important to reinforce the foundation of the partnership first and then talk about how we can get out there in the world.
Yeah. Yes, but so what types of arrangements might be possible here? There's probably a large number, but from our experience and talking to people we know who have opened up or considering it, what are the different possibilities here? And, maybe there's a way of separating it into, you're both interested in making this change together. And then situations where, at least at the beginning, one person is interested in making this change, whereas the other person is not so interested in it, but is at least willing to allow their partner to explore this on their own if it's something that they really want. So what might it look like? What are the possibilities?
Well, obviously it depends on the personalities involved, because some people want to know everything and some people want to know nothing. So obviously there's the famous don't ask, don't tell. Yeah. For those who are uncomfortable by this new change, may feel more comfortable not really knowing anything about what's going on with their partner and just allowing them to sort of do their own thing, explore their own stuff, and just kind of do the work on themselves, the mental juggling, whatever they need to do to kind of feel okay about everything, and hopefully talking to someone about it and not just shoving their feelings down while their partner is going off and doing things. But
that seems to happen a lot, though.
It seems a lot.
The shoving of the feelings definitely happens.
Yes, I think that it's just unfortunate that we don't have a lot of access to support when it comes to this stuff. People don't talk about it, and even good friends don't tell their friends that they're having like marital issues and are considering doing this and wanting to talk about their feelings about the whole thing. We didn't really have anyone to talk to when we first started.
No, we had a book.
Yes, and there are a lot of books now, and books can be super helpful for sure. But I think getting a support network, like just pick one friend that is not going to judge and is not going to give you, any. They're just going to listen and hopefully give you maybe some advice on how to deal with your feelings, but someone else to bounce some of your thoughts and feelings with, that's not your partner, would be very helpful. Or a therapist or a coach, that helps too.
Yeah.
For sure it does. But people, unfortunately, more than not, people don't, and they suffer, unnecessarily so, I think. It's not going to be easy just because you have people to talk to, but it will be helpful and easier, I think. But
okay, so we have
we have don't ask, don't tell. Sorry, kind of went on a tangent. I very much enjoyed us doing things together. I thought that was fun. I mean, it helped that I'm also bisexual. So
so what does it mean that we did things together? Like, you mean
like
just
met
for
new
others
people
who
together.
may not know what we're talking about?
So met new people together. So went on dates together with other people. I thought was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And we learned a lot about each other that way, just kind of seeing each other in this new light. Not new, actually, but kind of brought us back to the original days of dating. I mean, you and I never really went on dates when we first started. So that's the whole...
I mean, we were also very young.
We were so young. So yeah, we were 19, 20.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was like after seeing we knew each other for many years, and all of a sudden we were kind of going on dates again with new people. It was extremely exciting. So that's just even talking about it. Forget meeting people and actually going on these dates. I think just talking about the prospect of meeting people and going on dates together is already fun. It can be. And could bring up a lot of thoughts and feelings of you and your partner. So that's going on it together is helpful. Even if one of the people in the partnership is not sold on the whole idea, just being brought along, I think, could make them feel better about the whole...
Yeah. I've heard that...
the whole arrangement.
I've heard about that sort of thing recently, where one of the partners is not fully on board, but the only way that they're comfortable with the situation is if they're involved. And, I could see why that would be a way of getting through it, but it's one thing to think about, I want to be involved, but it's another thing to actually see your partner with somebody else.
Well, that's...
And so I think
poly this is advanced poly stuff now.
Yeah, and I think if you're new to it, I think you have to really consider whether that's something you really want to do. Unless you're excited about it, excited about the prospect of seeing your partner with another person. Then I don't know if it's necessarily the best option.
Well, but I'm just going to push back a little bit, only because I know that it was important for me when you started seeing other women.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know what they looked like, and I wanted to meet them, and that because I knew that would make it better for me. Yeah. Even though I was already sold on the whole thing, I still knew that about myself. I knew that seeing the person, humanizing the other person, and seeing that they're a real person with, great features and flaws, which made it kind of normal and way easier to handle. But it was earlier on. Like what you're talking about might be difficult is if you're seeing your partner with someone that they've already been dating for a long time and they have these intense feelings towards. Yeah, that would be really hard to see. Yeah. But at the beginning, when it's kind of light and exciting and fun, it doesn't seem all that threatening, I think, at first. And so already normalizing it, I think, does help. From my personal experience, it helped to meet. But it's not for everyone, obviously.
So it's kind of like exposure therapy, It's like you have a hard time with it at first, but each time you encounter it, I think for most people, it probably gets easier.
Yeah, and the stories in your head are way worse than reality.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I found. I found that when you were seeing somebody new, it was always harder for me until I actually met the person. And then once I met the person, it wasn't nearly as bad because all the stories I made up in my head about this person turned out not to be true.
Mm-hmm.
So, or at least they were just a regular person. It's not
Humanize
some
it, yeah, for
not
sure.
some fantasy I had made up in my mind. So I think, for some people, being open is the better option. I would argue it's probably the better option for most people, even if it feels scary. The don't ask, don't tell situation, I think, runs the risk of, like, sure, it's protecting your feelings
Yeah.
if you can pretend it's not happening,
Right.
but I think it also has the potential to create more distance between you and your partner. And so, anyway, just to bring us back to these options. So we
Yeah.
have sort of these options about the levels of openness, right? And so
Right.
there's the don't ask, don't tell, which is basically you do whatever you want and you don't tell me about it, and we just carry on as if nothing has changed. That's one option. Option two that we've talked about is
Doing
you're
it together.
totally doing things together, at least at the beginning, exploring together, meeting people together, that kind of thing. And then I suppose a third option would be you're both open about it, but you're doing your own thing. And it could
Yeah.
be a mix of all of those.
It will be a mix of all
Yeah.
of these because you're going to meet some people that are going to be in your life for like 2 months, and then there's going to be other people that are going to be in your life for 2 years.
Yeah.
Or you're going to go on just one date, and so all of those combinations could happen
Yes.
within a relationship.
Yeah.
And we've experienced, like, there were partners of mine that you didn't meet for years, and then there were partners of mine that you met right away.
Yeah.
So, like, we just kind of
Yeah.
did what we felt right at the time with,
Sure.
and I think that's also really important to, like, talk about what you're comfortable with now, and knowing to check in a few years later, a few weeks later, a few months later, and seeing if any of that shifts, because you could just rearrange things all the time. You just can. I think that there isn't just one way of doing it, and now you've locked it in,
Yeah.
and now it's going to be like this from now on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that just constantly talking about how you're feeling and how things are going is very important. So those are all some options.
Yeah, I think that's sort of options in terms of openness. And just to your point about communication, I mean, there's no way around it. Like, if you're going to take this step in your relationship, no matter how much you talk to each other now about your feelings, it's going to increase dramatically after making this change. I think it's just a necessary thing that your communication has to be constant, and it's because your feelings will evolve over time, and
you're going to discover things that you've never knew
Yeah.
you were capable of, or your partner is.
Absolutely. But then there's, like, more options in terms of what you're hoping to get out of opening up your relationship, right? Because you mentioned, I think, at the beginning of our conversation that you could be doing it for a variety of different reasons. It could be about connection. It could be about sex. It could be about, finding more love, whatever it might be. And, so you have, like, there's sort of terms here that are used. So, like, open relationships generally, although not always, but the term, I think, is commonly used to talk about relationships where you can have sexual connections with other people outside of your monogamous relationship, but they don't necessarily evolve beyond that. It's sort of you're interested in just the sexual connection for the most part. It's not to say you can't have some emotional bond to the person you're having sex with. I think that's inevitable, but it doesn't. You're not trying to. I mean, if you're doing it on a continual basis, right? But it doesn't necessarily evolve into a romantic relationship, right?
Yeah.
Sure. And then you can have sort of non-monogamous, polyamorous, whatever term you want to use, connections. Hi, Shlomo. where the objective is more to, have a romantic relationship with somebody else.
Yes.
And I think, in our experience, one sort of led into the other. Like we started out with an open relationship, and I think that was perhaps a gentler way of easing ourselves into this.
Totally.
We had this rule in the beginning, and there will be rules. We had this rule in the beginning that you can't, at first it was, you can only see the person one time, I think. We had this rule.
Yeah. God,
And then
20 years ago, I don't remember.
Yeah. Which, in hindsight, all of these things in hindsight don't seem very good, in my opinion. But it helped us. It helped us ease ourselves into it, right? Or maybe it was you couldn't spend the night. I'm having a hard time remembering, but I know for sure we had this rule that you couldn't develop feelings for the person.
Yes, I
which
remember that.
is a very strange rule, because how do you stop yourself from having feelings for somebody?
Yeah.
I mean, you can not pursue those feelings, but to not have feelings is kind of a weird rule. But it made us feel better at the time about opening up our relationship.
Yes, because it somehow separated the emotional part with the sexual part.
Sure.
So it's like it's fine to have sex with other people, but like you can't like fall in love as if you have any control over that.
Exactly. But that was a way of easing ourselves into it. And then eventually, when we realized that we had developed emotional connections with other people that we wanted to pursue, I think at first it was challenging, but we also had this experience of allowing each other to be with other people. And I don't like the word allowing, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We had this arrangement where we
were comfortable with this idea of meeting other people. And I think that we realized that it was maybe easier for us to sleep with other people and leave it at that. And then over time, we realized as we were getting older that we just like to meet other people, and they are other humans in the world, and they're dynamic and complex, and there's like a lot going on there. And why stop at sex, sort of thing? Right? Like, what isn't the point to just meet another person, and maybe you'll meet them, and the only good thing about that person is about the connection that you have with them is the sexual one, but maybe there are other ways to connect with people, and I think we just kind of learned that over time.
And I think,
which is an interesting distinction to make, though, because we were so young. And I think people deciding now in their 40s to meet new people, they might already kind of arrive to it as like, I want a full-blown relationship, or I want just sex, because they just, they've gone through it. They've gone through life a little longer, where we were just so young. So it was easier to kind of wrap our brains around.
When we were younger, we wanted sex. Let's be frank about it.
Well, I still want sex.
No, I know, but I think that's, primarily what we were interested in with other people, because we were still getting to know each other,
Yeah.
And so I don't know if we really at the beginning needed to have more romantic relationships, or we were interested in that at the time. But over time, I agree that it sort of evolved into that. But I think that's sort of the reason I bring it up, is because we know some people in our lives now that are in their 40s and are trying to open up their relationships. Seems that a bunch of people we know are trying to do this all at the same time. And I think it seems to be happening a lot faster than it did for us, right? We had this long period
the luxury of time.
Yeah, we had this ability to sort of ease ourselves into it over a decade, whereas I think when people have the feeling when they're in their 40s, because I have this feeling, so I imagine others do as well, that you don't have as much time as you used to to make these changes in your life. And so I think the feeling is I want it all at once. And
it's now or never.
It's challenging. It's challenging to do that especially in a relationship. Many of these relationships are long-term ones where they're are kids involved and where they're, people have been monogamous for
Ever.
their entire adult life.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
it's a lot to ask, I think, to say we're just going to overhaul this whole thing all at once within a matter of weeks.
Yes.
It might take time, and there might be ways of easing yourself and your partner into it by just taking these incremental steps. Exposure therapy at these increments until your partner realizes that, okay, I can actually handle this. It's not so bad after all. And they might come to the realization that they're actually gaining something from it. So maybe that's something we can talk about, is why we know what maybe the person who's trying to open up their relationship stands to gain, right? Mm-hmm. Like they want more connection, they want more sex, they want more love, mm-hmm. whatever. And their partner might come to want those things too, even if they don't at the beginning. Mm-hmm. That's a possibility. But let's say your partner isn't necessarily interested in meeting other people or going on dates or having sex with other people or having another romantic relationship. It's just not something that they've ever thought they wanted to happen, and they aren't interested in it now. But in that case, what could they possibly gain from opening up their relationship?
Yeah, in fact, I think that's very common. I think a lot of people who end up in relationships, there's like the social extroverted one and the introverted homebodied one, and they like get along so well and they live together for a long time, and then the social extroverted one is just like, I want to meet more people. Yeah. And then the introvert is like, no, I just want to stay home and just, be with my family, and so yes, I think that happens. Actually, that's a very common dynamic. So you probably do get a lot of it would be challenging to figure out what the introvert stands to gain. I think that one thing that we learned is that the reality is you're not going to necessarily meet like a ton of people all at once. So you might meet a few people, and they could be really amazing people, and you can add a friend to your life, or just access to things you wouldn't have had access to before, because now you've invited another person with their whole lives and experiences that they can bring to your lives. So I think that there's definitely things to gain in that way.
Yeah, but that sort of thing takes time. It's not like your partner is going to meet somebody and then you're automatically going to be best friends with them. It could happen, but that's a big step. Like that's something someone who's struggling with jealousy. I think it's a lot to ask initially for them to be friends with their new partner, but it is over time. I think I learned certainly that there are lots of benefits to that. It's kind of nice to be close with somebody else who's also close with your partner. I mean, chances are if your partner cares about this other person and you care about your partner, you're going to care about this other person too, because you all are compatible, right? Yes. And so I think, certainly that's a very wonderful thing when it happens. But that's advanced step.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Well, I mean, you can. Another way of looking at it is also when you meet someone new and that new person is bringing things to light in terms of what you enjoy and what you like, and you could potentially bring that into your other relationship. So, I'm trying to think of an example, but what would be an example that something that we've sort of discovered with someone else, but then brought into our relationship?
There's probably a number of things. It could be sexual things, right? Like new definitely. Things but again, this is an area where it might introduce challenge as well, because you see your partner doing new things that they've never done before when you're, being intimate with them, and that might be like, where did this come from? It might be that might be hard, but
Well,
but it could, but you
it be
stand to
hard?
benefit from it.
Yes, exactly. I think
Yeah.
you quickly will get the benefit from it before
Yeah.
you sit around being like, I wonder where they learned that move from. I mean, yeah, like that's that. But isn't that true about everything? You know,
Sure.
you go out into the world and you learn things and you bring them back with you to your people, and I think that
Yeah.
you only stand to gain.
No,
And I think that just from a personal growth perspective, like if you feel fulfilled and you feel the freedom of being out in the world, you become a better partner for it, because you're just feeling better. You are more in touch with your worth to the world and what you can offer, and so you in turn look at your partner being like, you're supporting me in being this person in the world, and I love you for that, and I want to, like.
Well, I think that's one of the major benefits, is that it might seem counterintuitive that sort of negotiating this arrangement where your partner can go out and see other people, that might seem at first like it's going to pull you apart, but I think your partner's coming to you asking to open up your relationship. I'm speaking from the perspective of the person who might not be in favor of this in the relationship. So from that perspective, it seems counterintuitive that allowing or negotiating with your partner to go out and allowing them to go out into the world. I use the word allowing, but I'm not sure what other word to use there. Go out into the world and meet other people and make other connections. You think that's going to, cause you to drift apart in your relationship. But part of the reason your partner's coming to you asking for this freedom is because they want freedom, right?
Right.
And if you give them that freedom and still maintain your relationship, they're going to be so grateful for that, right? And they're only going to want to be with you more, I would think. I mean, that's been my experience. And so I think that's one of the maybe counterintuitive benefits.
Yeah, I think this statement of like, now you're the reason they can versus the reason they can't. And I think that holds a lot of power.
Yes.
You view your partner as the reason, is this like, you're the reason I can feel good about going out into the world and doing the things I love to do, instead of the reason I can't, which is how you may have been looking at your partner up until this point, because you didn't want to bring it up and you didn't want to talk about how you have these desires that may not have anything to do with your partner, but you still have them. And then you're coming to them saying, can I explore this?
Yeah.
And now they're saying, yes, you can. It's like, that's amazing, And I mean, obviously you should never do it if you don't feel comfortable doing it, and you shouldn't say yes you can if you really, really don't want to, obviously. But it does hold a lot of power to feel like you're supporting your partner and as you said, allowing, but not the word allowing, but
I don't like, not to get into it too much, the reason I don't like the word allowing is because your partner can do whatever they want whenever they want anyway. It's not like you're giving them any. You're just saying, within the context of your relationship, in the sort of rules that you have established, your pre-existing sort of norms that you had established in your relationship, you're sort of opening up those norms. You're removing some of them to give them the opportunity to go out while still maintaining your relationship, because you could break up, right? Like that's, So, but you don't want to do that. So that's what I mean by allowing, but it's not necessarily the right word.
Yes.
Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I mean, another benefit, because I'm not sure we're necessarily building a strong case here for someone who's skeptical. Not that I think that you always need to agree to this. Like, there are some people just flat out that this sort of lifestyle is not for.
That's what I meant.
I think that,
That's what I meant when I said, like, you don't say you can if you can't. You just don't.
Certainly. And then we can come back to this topic maybe to close around, you know, if it's not for everyone, what does that mean? But for your relationship. But I think another benefit is that if your partner's sort of asking for a freedom of a kind, which is to go out and meet other people and make other connections, whatever that looks like, the conversation isn't necessarily about sex and connection, it's about freedom, then there might be some freedoms in your relationship that you're also looking for. And they don't necessarily have to be about meeting other people.
Yes.
It could be, you know, you have a hobby that you want to spend more time on, or you you want to spend more time with friends, or whatever or you're more interested in career and you would like your partner to support you more in pursuing something in your career, whatever it might be. I think having this conversation about freedom allows you to ask for something too. And so that could be what you get out of it.
Yeah, I think that was something that we learned too. You know, that you get caught up with like, well, if you're going to see other people, I need to see other people, and you have to kind of balance it out all the time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to look that way. You know, if your freedom looks like meeting other people, then the other person's freedom could look different. And you have to agree as a couple that is weighed equally, so that there's no resentment building. But yeah, for us, I mean, I think that we also realize that we have different capacities of how many people we can bring into our lives.
Yeah.
And so if, you know, I may have more partners, but then you spend more time on doing other projects in your life.
Yeah.
And I have other partners that have other interests in their life, and they spend a lot of time doing that, which allows me to spend time with other people. So it works. So everyone's lives are going to look different, but I do think that opening your minds to other forms of freedom is extremely helpful if one of the people in the partnerships is not necessarily looking for more connections.
Yeah.
This could be something that they can explore. They can literally think of like, what did I always want to do and never had time to do? Or because I was in this relationship, I've given up this, and that. Yeah. Maybe I can pick one thing that I really wanted and I thought I could never have, and work towards that. And I think that that's what a wonderful partnership to be in, if you can allow space for that within the relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we already sort of acknowledged that this type of thing about opening up your relationship might not be for everyone. You know, some people, you mentioned capacity, right? Maybe there are definitely people out there who have capacity for one romantic relationship and are totally comfortable with that, and that's the way they want to live. And if you're in a relationship with a person who is like that, then I think we have to acknowledge that if you want to open it up, there's a certain amount, or broach this topic about opening up your relationship, there's a certain amount of risk that one takes when having this conversation.
Yes.
It's not always going to work out, and I think that that would be scary for a lot of people.
Yes.
And so I think, I don't think that's necessarily the norm. I think most people in a long-term relationship, at least in our experience, will try to make it work. But there's a risk, certainly, that if you're going to open up your relationship, it could be the end of that relationship. And so you have to kind of do the calculus about how important is it for you to have this freedom versus keeping your relationship intact. And so I think it's important to raise that.
Yeah, and also certainly if you have a family and children, and you know, this lifestyle doesn't have a blueprint of what it's going to look like in 5 years.
Sure.
And for a family structure, that's not a stable, doesn't seem like a stable scenario.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're not in agreement of like what you see your life looking like in 5-10 years, yeah, it's something that you can maybe even put a little like bookends on, being like, we can do it for a few years and then kind of come back to this family unit for a few years during, you know, your children's certain age where you need to be a bit more focused on the family, whatever. Like it might not work out long term of you opening up indefinitely, but maybe you open up for a short period of time, depending on what your needs are and what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's important. Those are good conversations to have when you're dropping the bomb on your partner and being like, this is what I want. Maybe I don't want it forever, but I just want it right now because I'm in this midlife celebration. And
you wanted to say crisis, but you changed the celebration.
Yeah.
I like that.
You know, you're just kind of like in this moment in life thinking, I want to try stuff, and maybe it's not forever, but maybe right now this is the right move. And if you can get on board, I think it could be quite rewarding. But certainly, if you know that that's just not the direction you want to go in, you should absolutely vocalize that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe another topic of conversation for another time would be like, when do you know that it's not for you and you need to just move on, you know?
Yeah. That might be a hard one for us to talk about, but I agree.
Because I don't know what that would feel like or be like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like to think that monogamy or non-monogamy is just a relationship structure, not necessarily something that like,
yeah,
it's not an identity necessarily. So I do think that you can move from one to the other throughout your life, but other people might feel differently.
Sure. Yeah. I think it is tied into identity for some folks. I agree. I think it's more of for me anyway, it's more of a way of structuring your relationship. And in another context, I could probably be monogamous. Maybe some people can't be, and some people can't be non-monogamous. Like they're just one or the other. But I think most people, it's fluid and it changes throughout your life.
Mm-hmm.
So, like many things. So
yeah, like many things. I know.
So is there anything you wanted to talk about that we haven't talked about on this topic?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we covered a lot.
We did. Well, hopefully it was useful. Anyway.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.